Well, everybody, John Bornschein here, and this is Cable Lane. In today's weekly Bible study, we're going to learn about the I Am. Listen to this. And God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, Thus you shall say to the children of Israel, I am has sent me to you. Now, this is taken from Exodus chapter 3, and in this context, we now find Moses, who is out in the wilderness. At one point, he was in Pharaoh's household. And then he took matters in his own hands. He was very protective of the Hebrews, and one Egyptian was abusing another Hebrew brethren. And Moses killed him, buried his body in the sand. Later, he comes to the defense of Jethro's daughters. And so he was, at one point, very confident, very self-empowered, if you will. And something was about to change. God was humbling this man to the point where he would become a shepherd. And out in the wilderness, he would have an encounter with the God he had called upon, the God he had known by name, but didn't really know intimately, not very acquainted with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And it was out in the wilderness where he sees a burning bush. However, the fire didn't consume the bush. It was the Shekinah glory of God that consumed around it, but didn't actually burn it up. And so Moses is enamored with what he is seeing and now hearing audibly the voice of God. Now, we find that through this, God is speaking to Moses to direct him to be an agent that God will use to deliver the people of Israel out of captivity. And Moses is overwhelmed by this assignment. And God will do something wonderful through Moses. He will, in fact, do a miraculous thing where Moses puts his hand into his own tunic and pulls it out. It's leprous, puts it back in, pulls it out. It's cleansed. He will throw his staff to the ground. It turns into a snake. He picks it back up again and it's restored. And in this, God was demonstrating his authority and his power, and that God would enable Moses to do something he couldn't do in his own strength. However, with each of these displays of God's power and authority, Moses questioned. He was no longer confident in himself. He had been humbled to such a point where he no longer thought of himself as a man who was fully capable and endowed with certain gifts and prominence. No, he was now a lowly shepherd. And 5 different times he counters God's commands with his own self-doubt. For example, the first one is clear that he was doubting of his own abilities, and rightfully so. But the second one was a lack of authority. The third was a fear of rejection. Fourthly, he had a fear of public speaking. He tried to use a speech impediment as though he wouldn't be able to speak to the people. And then fifth, he just has a fear of the assignment. And with each one of these, God counters it. And he even tells Moses his very name. I am who I am. And this is a powerful declaration of who God is. We don't normally introduce ourselves like that. I am who I am. And this is a tetragrammaton, which was Yod He Vav He. So we see it as YHVH or YHWH. It is the revered name of God that is spoken over 7,000 times in the Old Testament. I've seen numbers between 6,800 times and over 7,000 times. And it's always the name that they would not say. You could write it in rare occasion. You could implore by way of using a tetragrammaton, but you didn't say it. They didn't want the holiest of holies, God himself, his name coming through impure lips. And so there was a deep admiration and reverential awe of God, and rightfully so. And so they used the tetragrammaton, as we see in Hebrew, and it was a way to try to ensure that we didn't say his name, or that his name came through these impure lips, a mouth, a people of unclean lips, as Isaiah would say. And so here we have God revealing himself. Now, why did he declare, I am who I am? Well, we see Jesus also say this in Revelation chapter 1, verse 8, that I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the Almighty. And he did that in the Gospel of John as well, where he declared that he was I am. And they were ready to stone him for it because he was declaring that he was before Moses. He was and is God. And to reveal himself as the I am means that he is all sufficient. He is dependent on no one and none other. His power, his might, his glory is wholly in himself. He was before time. He is outside of time. He is in the present. He is in the future. He is in the past, all simultaneously. He is all-powerful God. He is the Almighty. Now consider, Moses didn't really know him in this way. And so to be revealed or have God reveal himself in this way to Moses was to show him that where he is weak, where Moses is weak, God is all powerful. Where Moses had no ability in his own strength, God had all the ability. Where Moses was fearful, God has no fear. Where there would be waters that needed to be parted, this was nothing for God. Where judgment needed to come on the Egyptians, this is no matter for God. This is an easy thing for God. He is the I am. Where Moses was the I can't, I won't, I'm unable, God is the I am. And you would think that where he saw the burning bush, well, that moment in and of itself, to hear the audible voice of God, to be in the presence of the Shekinah glory of God, he might have wanted to just plant right there and develop the first church of the burning bush and never go anywhere else, just to be in that space. We would have been awestruck by that. But God had a journey for Moses, and through that journey, he would learn the various attributes and character and ways of God that would draw him ever closer to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to know the I am, to write of him, to speak of him, and to go wherever he led, because Moses was never going to have that strength in himself. It was always through the I am. So brothers and sisters, my challenge to you today is that we have the privilege, according to Romans chapter 8, that through Jesus, who is also God, through his blood, through his sacrifice, we have now been covered, atoned for before the holiness of God, where we can go into his presence, into the very Shekinah glory of the presence of God before his throne room, and pray and speak to him and to know him through his word. And what a privilege that is. We can know the great I am. Why delay? Get on your knees before him today. Implore him to know him. Ask for wisdom. Seek him often. Be in his word and a person of prayer, and you too can know the I am. God bless you, my friends. Take care.